Welcome to Climate and Health, New Challenges for the Virgin Islands. I'm here with my co-host, Winthrop Maduro, and from our studio on St. Croix, Pamela Samuel. We've all heard about global warming and the consequences we will face as a result. In the next hour, we hope to educate you on how climate change will begin to affect our island, our lifestyle, and our health.
Thank you, Dr. Ragster. With us today are a host of guest panelists who will inform us on various aspects of the impending climate change. Our experts will share their knowledge on environment and environmental changes. Pam?
That's right, Winthrop. We will also look at those climate changes, how they'll affect our health. Specifically, we'll be questioning medical doctors, health disparity experts, Department of Health representatives, and other doctors who work with communities with limited funds, resources, and access to good health care. Dr. Ragster?
Thank you, Pamela. Before we begin our discussion, let's take a look at a short clip that sums up the reason for this show.
The Earth, a beautiful place. Its balance of climate marvels us and supports our living on the planet. But over the years, our climate has been changing at a faster rate. The very climate we depend on to sustain us is changing in ways that can be more of a challenge for us. Experts say rising seas, warmer seas, long dry spells, more intense hurricanes, and drenching rains are signs of climate change in the Caribbean and even closer to home in the Virgin Islands. They also predict these changes may continue at least to the end of this century if we don't reduce the amount of greenhouse gases being produced. Climate change is taking place around the world, leaving different clues. Scientists here say some of the changes create more public health challenges, and for the Virgin Islands, it could be dengue and fish poisoning.
This program is based on a research project about the linkages between climate change and public health in the Virgin Islands. It's part of the University of the Virgin Islands Caribbean Exploratory National Institute for Minority Health and Health Disparities Research Center for Excellence.
The research has identified potential connections between climate change and increasing outbreaks of dengue fever and fish poisoning.
Well, to help us discuss climate change this evening, we have Professor Roy Watlington. He is a retired professor of physics, and for the last 20 years, he has worked in the area of oceanography. Professor Watlington, what is climate change and why should we be concerned?
Climate change is a shift in the global averages of weather-related variables such as sea surface temperature, atmospheric temperature, net precipitation, winds, and so forth. And when this shift occurs in such a manner that the Earth's environment in total, globally, changes so that people, living things, and the very Earth, the vegetation, everything, is having a hard time adjusting to that, it becomes of a concern to us. What is really concern is the acceleration of climate change, because the climate, left to its own, will change gradually anyway, but over very long periods of time. It turns out that we realize that climate change is being accelerated and that we may have a lot to do with that. We have to pay close attention to that because, one, primarily we're probably the most vulnerable to the negative effects of this change, and therefore we will be affected. Secondarily, we can do something about it. Greenhouse gases was just mentioned in the clips, and that's one of the biggest contributors that we make to increasing climate change, accelerating global warming. But last but not least, things can be done about it. And so if we want to be able to hold on to our arable farmland, if we hope to be able to protect our shoreline communities from severe inundation from the sea, if we want to minimize diseases that are tropical diseases that are borne by pathogens that benefit from increased air temperatures and ocean temperatures, then there are things we can do, and we should begin doing that now.
Well, you've begun the process, but could you tell me a little bit more about the types of climate activity that we could expect in the future?
Global warming is the one that's mentioned the most, and concomitant with that, sea level rise. Global warming of both the atmosphere and the air has several effects. By warming the oceans, you expand the oceans. It takes up more volume and therefore intrudes into the land. by warming the air, you change the climate and therefore extend the tropical zone so that it pushes into the subtropics. There again, organisms, pathogens that would carry tropical diseases that could not have survived in subtropical or temperate weather now have an increased range of survival. In addition to that, we worry about the change to our agricultural products. As the air temperatures change, as precipitation patterns change, places that are used to moisture and could grow rice and certain crops now can't grow those because drought has set upon them. Places that are used to dry conditions now have to deal with inordinately heavy rains that they're not ready to deal with.
Well, when it comes to climate change in the Virgin Islands, who's collecting the data that we need, and what kinds of data should we be collecting?
Well, fortunately, many people have started working on this, and the major institutions that are associated with environment, particularly the major universities in the Caribbean, all of the Caribbean, have programs going on. Here, for example, at the University of the Virgin Islands, we have people studying how coral reefs are being affected by the warming of the oceans. And at the same time, we have others studying how the seawater itself is changing, where the temperature of the water and the chemicals that it carries show evidence of the climate change. Because still, it is necessary to convince the decision-making officials that climate change is occurring. That battle is not over, and that's important. But the other thing that's going on, very fortunately, is a number of monitoring efforts of all the variables related to climate change, such as the Caribbean Integrated Coastal Ocean Observing System is pursuing. That's going on so that we will have a better handle on the rate at which change is being occurring, and also being able to convince the decision makers of what are the right things to do.
Thank you very much, Professor Watlington.